Thank you very much, Dr. Burda. This was really an honor to be here. I want to give you an introduction before I am interrogated by the Herald Tribune by Alison. But to understand where Turkey is coming from and where Turkey is heading, I want to start with an anecdote. One day, my prime minister was traveling in the southeastern part of Turkey, in a province called Siirt. And he was riding in his helicopter. He likes to make surprises. He asked the pilot to do a surprise landing in one of the mountainous villages in the southeastern part of Turkey, where predominantly the population is Kurdish. So we land in this village. It's the first time in the history of that village that a helicopter has ever landed there. So all the kids of the village gather around the helicopter to see who's going to come out of the chopper. And when the doors open, it is Turkey's prime minister that they know from their televisions. They all gather around him, and his photographer takes pictures. So he turns to his photographer and says, "Take their address down and make sure to mail photographs to these kids." And one of these 9-year-olds goes, "No, Mr. Prime Minister, he should not mail us the photographs. He should email them to us." Prime Minister goes, "So you have an email account?" He goes, "Yes, the teacher made sure we all have an email account and we surf the web." And I think this is a very important change, a very important transformation, not only in a mountainous Kurdish village of Turkey, but throughout the world. Digitalization is considered to be one of the assurances of democracy and liberalization in the 21st century, and my government is proud to be one of the most digital-friendly governments in the history of Turkey. If we look at numbers, right now there are approximately 13 million subscribers to broad-based internet in Turkey. If you consider 4 people use each subscription, that makes around 50 million of our 74 million population. That number, back in 2003, was only 20,000, and now it has exceeded 13 million. And this is a very important number to show how things are moving in Turkey. When we compare the subscriptions to last year, there's been 60% increase in the last one single year. There are approximately 350% increase in mobile phone usage, and most of the internet usage is through the mobile. So there are right now 65 million mobile subscriptions in Turkey out of 74 million. That makes 88%. That's where Turkey is heading. Voice transmission on phones back in 2004 was 20 billion minutes, and in 2010, within 6 years, with an increase of 500%, it has exceeded 125 billion minutes. We are communicating more than we ever did. Turkey is moving at a very fast speed, and of course, we need a lot of full-time researchers. Number of full-time researchers back in Turkey in 2000 was only 23,000, and now we have more than 70,000 full-time researchers, because my government has passed a law to support, provide incentive to R&Ds. 75 new research centers have been opened in Turkey by international companies like Fiat, Renault, Mercedes, Ford, Bosch, Ericsson, Alcatel, and we provide to create more incentives for companies. And I think this is a very important explanation about to understand where Turkey is coming and where Turkey is moving. The median age in Turkey right now is 29. If you consider the median age here in Germany, which is 45, Turkey is one of the youngest populations. The younger population also means it's much more easier to adapt to new technologies. And Turkey is economically doing very well. For the last 3 years in a row, we had an average of 8+% economic growth, when the European average was only 1.5%. Turkish geography is also very unique. Turkey is the most eastern part of the West and most western part of the East. For centuries, we have been a bridge and a hub between Europe and Asia, Islam and Christianity, energy resources and consumers. And I think Germany and Turkey are the rising stars. One is a current member of EU, the other one is a future member of EU. Talking of Turkey's EU membership, our first application was back in 1959. Turkey of 1959 was not exactly today's Turkey. Those days, our per capita income was around $300. Now it's more than $11,000. In those days, we only had 14 universities. Now we have more than 200 universities, and my good friend Victor is on the board of a few of them. Turkey's annual tourism income back in 1959 for the whole country, for the whole year, was $9 million. Last year, we did more than $30 billion. Turkey is growing. Turkey is the key to Europe's challenges as well. One of the main important priorities of Europe today is the economic crisis. Turkey is not only a market of 74 million, but within 3 hours of flying from Istanbul, you can actually reach 1.5 billion consumers. Another challenge ahead of Europe is energy. 70% of energy resources Europe needs are either to the south, north, or east of Turkey. Unless one of you guys come up with a new technology of wireless transfer of energy resources, Turkey's cooperation is a must to deal with Europe's energy issues. But more important than all of these numbers, I think Turkey's role in the shaping of 21st century. Back in 1999, President Clinton said 21st century will be shaped by Turkey's choices. And he was right. Let's look at what's happening in the Arab Spring today. The people who risk their own lives to demonstrate for democracy, freedom, better jobs, labor unions, free market economy, what do they really want? If you look at the surrounding countries, they want it to be like Turkey, because they all realize Turkey has a very similar culture, tradition, geography. But Turkey has all of those, has labor unions, has free market economy, has opposition. And the main question is, why is Turkey different compared to Egypt, Libya, Tunisia? Is because Turkey is a democracy. And that democracy has always been strengthened with Turkey's determination to become part of European Union. So every time some narrow-minded politician in Europe attacks Turkey's aspirations to become member of EU, they're also hurting the dreams of millions of people in the Arab Spring. That's why Turkey is a source of inspiration for other countries. That is why Turkey's contribution to EU would be ensuring this continental peace project to become a global peace project. If you look at EU, it's no longer an economic union. Economy is not a unification anymore, it's a source of division. But EU is still the best peace project if it could ensure that Germany, United Kingdom, France, Netherlands live within the same union without a problem, then Turkey's contribution would make sure that union could become a global one. And I think that's why Turkey is becoming more and more important. The only thing we need in our EU aspirations is patience, because eventually common sense will prevail. There are those who can try to limit freedom of speech within Europe. There are those who can try to provide bans on one sharing their ideas. But Turkey is working quite the opposite. In a country where people were afraid to admit they were Kurds 10, 15 years ago, we now have 24 hours of Kurdish broadcasting on state television. After a period of 88 years, my Greek Orthodox citizens had a religious ceremony, a mass, at the Smale monastery at the shores of Black Sea 2 years ago. The Armenian community hosted a mass in the historical Akdamar Church after a ban of 112 years. My Prime Minister gathered 20 citizens of Roma origin and announced new housing projects at a time when some in Paris was declaring that they should be sent out of the country in train wagons in 21st century. President Gül is the first president after our founding president Atatürk who has ever visited the place of worship for our Alawite citizens. Turkey is becoming much more democratic, much more transparent, much more prosperous. I'm not claiming that Turkey is perfect. I understand, I know, I feel that we still have issues, but I can easily tell you today's Turkey is much better than yesterday's Turkey, and I assure you tomorrow's Turkey will be even greater than today's Turkey, because we are determined. According to OECD, Turkey by 2050 will be the second largest economy in Europe after Germany. But if Germany decides to pay off all the bills of Greece, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Italy, we might end up being the largest. So, warning. But for those of you who are in business, Turkey is still the country where you can buy low and sell high later. There are more than 30,000 international companies working in Turkey, and we are looking for more and more to come. You're all welcome. There's highly competitive investment conditions. We have strong industrial and service culture. Equal treatment for all investors, being Turkish or non-Turkish, doesn't matter in Turkey, and Turkey is getting better and better. The rapid development of the age of information technology reminds us all of the creative destruction theory of Austrian economist Joseph Schumpeter. Any new invention is not only destroying older inventions, but it is also removing established habits. Thus, in fact, older structures are being replaced by new structures. That is what my government is doing in Turkey. We are changing, at times shaking establishment. That needs courage. That is what Prime Minister Erdogan is doing. Without his leadership, without his courage, we would not be able to share these good numbers with you. As they teach in Harvard, leadership is about disappointing your people at a rate that they can absorb. We're doing it in Turkey. Thank you for listening to me.
Minister Bagis, thank you very, very much for such a lively speech. You have a great reputation for being the man of sound bites, and you've definitely lived up to it. I'm going to start by tracing a 10-year arc. It's been almost 10 years since Prime Minister Erdogan came to power. When he did, Turkey was very avidly pursuing European Union membership. 10 years have gone by since then. We see leading countries like France and Germany here not in favor of Turkish membership. And also much history has evolved, most notably the Arab Spring, but also Turkey's foreign policy of having zero problems with its neighbors, turning great attention to its neighbors, and gaining in influence in the Middle East and beyond. How would you say the mood is in Turkey itself, amongst the business community, amongst politicians? Is there still an aspiration to join Europe? Or, from the tone of your speech, it sounds as if Turkey's much more determined to stand on its own merits and not to necessarily seek EU membership. Goodness me.
Well, I can speak on behalf of the government. We're more determined than we ever were to become member of EU. My new slogan is "Hold on tight, Europe. Turkey is coming to your rescue." But when we go to the streets and ask people's views, we get interesting numbers. Despite all the difficulties ahead of Turkey's EU membership, there is still 55% support for EU membership in Turkey. But when we ask people, do you think Turkey will be admitted? That number goes down to 30%. But when we ask people, do you think the EU reforms, some of which I explained in my introduction, have been good for Turkey's economy, human rights, and democracy? 73% say yes. It's the other way around in Europe. When you ask the European public opinion, do you want Turkey to join? Around 40% say yes. But when you ask people, do you think Turkey will join? 60% say yes. So there's lack of confidence on both sides. And my job is to close the gap. Mm-hmm. What is really alarming is 92% of Turks do not think Europe has been fair to Turkey.
What do you think Europe could do to correct that impression?
Turkey is the only candidate country where our citizens have to apply for a visa to travel to the Schengen region. That doesn't make sense. That's discrimination in the simplest terms. The Cyprus problem, which was not a prerequisite for membership of Cyprus, is now being portrayed as if it's a prerequisite for membership of Turkey. That doesn't make sense either. There is a pending EU Council decision of April 26, 2004, which calls for putting an end to isolation of Northern Cyprus. There is only one member state who is implementing that Council decision. Citizens of only one member state can easily travel to Northern Cyprus, import and export with Northern Cyprus, and that single state is Southern Cyprus. The Greek Cypriots trade and travel to Northern Cyprus, but would not allow other Europeans, including Germans or Austrians or French, to do the same. That's an oxymoron. Hypocrisy in the simplest terms.
What could you do to cut through that, though? I mean, it's very easy to say, here are the difficulties. What, in your job, concretely, do you do to overcome those
Well,
views?
in order to solve the Cyprus issue, we're encouraging the Turkish Cypriot leadership to make a deal with their counterparts, the Greek Cypriot leadership, and they're meeting in New York right now.
Well,
hopefully they will shake hands.
that would be
But
great after all
in
these
the lack
years.
of a solution, we have proposed that we're ready to open our ports, airports and seaports to Greek Cypriot vessels and planes if that council decision is implemented. So we're not asking for anything new, we're asking Europeans to implement their own decision, which was a unanimous decision back in April 2004.
Okay. If you say that, watch out Europe, Turkey is coming to your rescue,
I didn't say watch out, I said hold on tight.
well, hold on tight, Europe. That implies we're really in for a ride. What I would like to ask a little bit about is, I listened very carefully this morning to a presentation of Digital Bosporus, and in your speech also, you very wisely sketched the incredible growth of digital communication and what a dynamic place Turkey is. At the same time, as any country, but perhaps more extreme in Turkey than other places, we have 97 members of the media in jail in Turkey. How is that compatible with the free flow of information, and why are they sitting there? What could they do to be released?
Well, first of all, that number is not accurate. According to International Committee of Journalists, ICJ, there are only 7 journalists in prison in Turkey because
media,
of their
I said
activities.
media people, publishers,
some of those people that you mentioned, within the 67, not 97, it's 67 total who can be classified as journalists, have actually been found guilty of murder. Some are bank robbers. I mean, I don't know about Germany, but in Turkey, being a member of media does not give you immunity. As I said in my speech, I'm not claiming Turkey is perfect. We still have issues. That is why our Minister of Justice has announced last week that he's proposing a new package of reforms to make sure we speed the due process. One of the problems, my government has been in power for 10 years. In the first 8.5, we could not employ even one single judge or a prosecutor. Our population is 74 million. There are 12,000 judges and prosecutors trying to provide justice to all 74 million. That ratio is very low. We wanted to hire new judges and prosecutors. Every time we opened an examination for hiring, it was canceled by a court decision. The judicial branch wanted to keep it small and under control. Only after the constitutional referendum back in September of 2010, we could start hiring, but it takes time to train your new hires. We are now proposing a change in, for example, the bounce check law, which would reduce the workload of the courts by 12%. We're trying to use more alternative means of settlement in Turkey to lessen the work of the judicial branch. The judicial branch in Turkey is, believe me, very, very independent. Even a court case against my own party was brought 4 years ago with an attempt to close down the party, and I was among 71 people that the prosecutor wanted to ban from politics. And the indictment had 2 counts on me, personally. One of them was a statement I made, which was, people's representatives should represent the people. He thought that was very provocative. I should no longer be in politics. The second reason for me to be in the indictment was I had said I believe in women's right to wear the headscarf as much as their right to wear the miniskirt, because they are both freedom of expression issues as far as I'm concerned. You might want to express yourself with a miniskirt. Someone else might want to express herself with a headscarf. That's individual choice. But these were the mental status of Turkey. But thank God, Turkey is much more transparent today. We can now discuss every issue. I have more than 200,000 followers on Twitter, and I get all kinds of views as a politician. When you turn on the television to watch the debates, things that we could not even be discussed in the past are now part of our daily discussion. Civilian-military relations, relations between different religious groups, communities, ethnicities, everything can be discussed right now. So Turkey is going through a transformation.
So it's moving with the pace of the 21st century, which I guess we should be very happy about if indeed President Clinton is right and what Turkey decides will help shape all of our 21st centuries.
But this mentality in Europe, trying so hard to make sure Turkey makes the wrong choices, really bothers me.
In what way?
Unfortunately,
Give me one example.
there are those politicians who exploit Turkey's membership aspirations for their domestic politics.
Astonishing.
It's only 95% of us politicians who are doing the wrong things. The remaining part of us are really great guys.
Yes,
we're all great guys.
One more question, and then perhaps somebody in the audience would like to ask a question. Concerning, actually the sort of very latest news, which is relations between France and Turkey. The French Senate yesterday passed with much controversy a law that makes it a crime to deny the so-called genocide of the Armenians in Turkey in the early 20th century. I really am not interested in debating whether we call it genocide or not and relations between Armenians and Turks, but the relationship between France and Turkey seems also to be colored by recent events. We've seen the influence of the United States wane in countries like Egypt, and the influence of Turkey rise because it is portrayed as a country which is Islamic but also democratic and can serve as a model. We have also seen France, which traditionally was also a power in the Middle East, like the Ottoman Empire, reasserting itself in places like Libya. Do you think that the domestic politics in France are slightly influenced by this tussle for regional influence, or what is at the basis of this struggle?
Well, unfortunately, the upcoming elections in France in May has hijacked the national interest of France. The bill that was voted on yesterday has nothing to do with the Armenians or the Turks or the French public opinion. It is an attempt to shift votes from extreme right to center right. Traditionally, we have seen in Netherlands and also in Belgium, some politicians attack Islam in order to get the votes of the extreme right religious votes. In France, we have 10% Muslim population. The French with Algerian background, Tunisian background, Moroccan background are predominantly Muslim. So instead, President Sarkozy and his colleagues have chosen to insult Turkey in order to get the Le Pen votes to center-right. But I strongly believe that the job of a politician in every country is not to determine the past. It's our job to determine the future. That's why, instead of making judgments on what happened 100 years ago, we should try to make plans to make sure what will happen in the next 100 years will be greater than expected. I strongly believe a number of French people who still believe in the ideals of the French Revolution, ideals of European Union, ideals of freedom of speech, are much greater than those who have narrow vision. And I'm sure the French Senate Committee on Rules and Constitution has already declared that this bill is unconstitutional. So we're waiting for the process to be completed. I'm sure that bill will be voted down. But in response to your question about a competition in the broader Middle East, that is possible. There has always been this argument about shifting of axes for many countries. Well, nothing is shifting, but opportunities are shifting. Before Gaddafi went down, his daily oil sales were 500 million euros per day. That is why so many countries are interested in Libya, because they know there's a lot of potential, and those countries need to be rebuilt. At this time of economic crisis, the construction industry, the energy industry, the technology, everyone is interested in getting a piece of the cake. And it's only normal for competition. But going out of the rules of competition is what makes it really dirty.
I don't want to contest whether people are sort of dealing in the currency of the past, but I would just note that the response from Turkey to yesterday's action in France, your Prime Minister raised the possibility of withdrawing support for Euronews, which apparently Turkish National Radio and Television has a 15.5% stake in Euronews, which is based in France. And the Foreign Minister spoke of the possibility of a new era of inquisition. It seems to me that if you don't want to deal in the currency of the past, it's best not to invoke something as dark as the Inquisition. But maybe somebody has a question in the audience. Mr. Halberstadt, and then the gentleman over there.
Minister, let's get away from Europe for a moment. Let's get away from oil. Let's look at your region, which is in turmoil. Actually, almost the entire former Ottoman Empire is in turmoil, all those countries which are covered by that. Looking at Egypt, very close by to you, and you'd always hope that Egypt would see Turkey as a role model. Actually, we had hoped that.
I said source of inspiration, Victor.
Huh?
I don't like the word role model or example, but I rather use source of inspiration.
But leaving aside subtleties, Egemen, leaving them aside, what is happening in Egypt impacts the region very much. Could you, in summary, enlighten us about your government's views on what that may mean for the region and also for Europe then?
Well, we have always supported our common ideals in NATO, our common ideals in EU, which are democracy, freedom of speech, free market economy, and so forth. And we defend the people in all of these countries to determine their own future. There is no nation that does not deserve democracy. Every nation deserves to decide for themselves. Turkey is a source of inspiration, not only by her achievements, but also by her mistakes. I mean, back in 1960, we had a military coup where we executed our own prime minister, and I'm ashamed of that today. Looking back what happened in 1930s in Turkey to the Alawite community, we're not proud what happened. But all those have taught us to become more transparent. This democracy is not a one-size-fits-all concept. Every country's understanding of democracy will be shaped with their history, traditions, and within the groups. The main dilemma in the Middle East today is they want to have their democracy, and we want to support them. We want will of people to govern. But we want will of people to be pro-Israeli as well. And that's where the complication starts. Israel has ignored the streets of the Arab countries for so long. And I think this is going to be one of the main challenges ahead of us. Israel has to understand that they need to respect the people in Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algiers, Syria, in all of the countries. And that's where I think the next challenge would be. And Turkey can play a very important role in establishing bridges as we have in the past. We're the first Muslim country that has ever recognized Israel's sovereignty and convinced many other Muslim nations to do the same. But you said turmoil. I agree. In Syria, we still witness innocent people are being killed. We have to stop it. We all have a responsibility. We might be doing great here in Munich today, but people in Damascus are very nervous. And we need to do something about it. And we need to cooperate. No country can deal with these issues on its own, and we need international consensus.
Thank you. You had a question over there.
Your Excellency, you are definitely excellent in speaking and in avoiding some of the issues and twisting others. You said something about French and about hypocrisy, and I must say that Turkey's position about Israel is not only unfair, but it's also far from being understood by anybody, particularly us who spent particularly as so much of our tourism, most of our tourism is what used to be in Turkey, and it's very difficult to understand this position. It's very difficult to understand why you get involved in our politics, and then you complain about us getting, or others getting involved in your politics. Thank you.
First of all, I did not use any words to insult Israel, but I warned that there is an issue. You might want to ignore the problem, but the problem will not go away. There is anger in the Arab streets against Israel, and I said we all have to work on it for the future of Middle East and for the future of international peace. What happened between Turkey and Israel is a different story. 9 Turkish innocent citizens were killed, executed in international waters by Israeli military, and all Turkey expected was a simple apology, and it's been more than 2 years that that apology has not come. It's only normal for Turkey to react. If 9 German citizens were killed in international waters while carrying humanitarian assistance to a part of the world that needs it, German government would react as well. But what I'm saying is totally different. I'm saying while we are establishing democracies in the Middle East, we need to also make peace between those democracies and Israel, and Turkey can play a role. I'm still trying to be positive, and you're the one who are twisting. You're better than me.
On that somewhat discordant note, I think we have to shut it down, but I really do thank you for coming here and making clearer to this audience the opportunities and the obstacles that lie in the way of Turkish-European cooperation. Minister Bagis, thank you very much.
I thank you.